Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk covered limited time and FOMO events, the reason for the Age Gods delay and the different god coming in his place, discussions around the full release of the game from beta, and more. So without further ado, let's jump into today's Titan Talk recap. First up, they're aware of an issue with gamepad players not being able to purchase account boosters and are working on a fix. They're also aware of the Mystic Guardian Athena skin missing some VFX compared to Smite 1. Someone asked why the Sobek Traveler market is diamonds only and legacy gems can't be used on it, and Kilgoon said it's because the market is basically a prism bundle and prisms are diamond only content in Smite 2, so they felt like the market should be also. They did also mention that you get the Sobek skin for free by buying this though, which sort of saves you the legacy gems that would normally be spent on the skin. So it kind of evens out at that point. You almost are like using legacy gems in a certain way. Isaiah also said that Landshark Sobek will be available in the store as normal for legacy gems only after the Traveler market leaves. There was a question of why the Athena skin isn't in the classic skin chest, and they said it should be now. That was just a mistake that it wasn't there on launch. Someone asked about when the next full Wandering Market collection will be, and they said it will be in the next update for OB11, and they might be able to get Ben, the art director, on the show to talk about the market and some other art related stuff, maybe later this week or next week. Kilgood also talked about the Traveler markets and thinks they're a good way of letting players spend their excess market coins in a fun way, rather than just, for example, releasing the Emoja skin in a chest or for direct purchase with nothing else attached to it. He also mentioned that the Emoja market did better than they would have expected had it just been a skin release, so they can probably expect more Traveler markets in the future. Someone asked about the H-God delay, and Kilgoon actually mentioned that they will be doing a different all-new god before they release the H-God, and that we likely won't be seeing them until very late this year or early next year, with a different new god release coming later this year. So it seems like they are either having trouble getting the H-God made in a way that they're happy with, or they want to delay that god for a bigger release somewhere down the line. Kilgood also mentioned that they don't feel like the game is in a state right now where the marketing benefits of a brand new hype god release will be super worthwhile, which is partially why they're delaying them. They feel like adding more core gameplay features is the better focus right now. This is just my speculation, but they do tend to do big releases in January or February, like every new Smite 1 season is in that time frame. The big initial reveal for Smite 2 was in January 2024, and even the launch of open beta and free-to-play for Smite 2 was in January 2025. And with them saying they want to delay the H-God for a larger release with a patch themed around it, which is something they said on a previous Titan Talk, that timeline could coincide with a full release early next year. That's entirely my speculation though. They've given no official information on when they want to full release the game, and I could absolutely see them wanting more time to cook in the beta phase before fully releasing, as that will be likely the last big first impression that the game gets. Kilgood also mentioned later in the show that a key milestone they need to hit before full release is getting the new player experience to be much better than it is now. At the moment, they can sort of get away with it because the game is in beta and a lot of the people playing are Smite 1 migrations, not entirely brand new players to the franchise. But once they make that step out of beta, they need the new player experience to be really good and leave a good first impression on anyone coming in to try the game on full release. Moving on though, someone asked about the ranked borders. As they mentioned last week, the ranked rewards weren't quite ready for the update launch, and Isaiah said they might be ready today, but not for certain. It could be tomorrow or Wednesday. There's just some extra stuff that they need to do in terms of making sure players are aware that they got the ranked rewards, giving them a notification, that kind of stuff. There was a question about limited time skins and cosmetics, and Kilgoon said generally they want to do as little completely time-gated stuff as possible. The Traveler markets, for example, will have their skins available for direct purchase once the market leaves, or the Traveler will return at some point in the future. They're not sure on which way they want to go with that stuff yet, but they won't be entirely time-gated, as in when the collection leaves you can never get them again. They want to do less of that stuff in Smite 2, which is good to hear. Someone asked about the grass being missing on Xbox, and Kilgoon said that was intentional, as they had some evidence suggesting that the grass was causing a lot of the crashes that people were experiencing on Xbox. They have made some improvements in OB10 in that regard though, and they might be able to turn the grass back on soon for Xbox players. Someone mentioned that they've been getting a lot of people confused when they get silenced, as the grey screen makes it look like you died, and Isaiah said they have toned that down in OB10 based on feedback, so it should be a little bit less aggressive while still being noticeable to alert you to the fact that you're silenced. There was a question on if we can get more early access gods on future flash tests, and Kilgoon said they'd like to, but it's sort of on a case-by-case basis on whether or not they feel the next god or gods are in a good enough state for players to test them and provide actual feedback. They did say that Ganesha will be available when they flash test OB11 alongside Scylla, who will be that update's god release, but at the moment they're not sure if the next god after Ganesha will be far along enough to flash test at that point. Someone asked if we could expect a sort of mid-season patch that's larger and generates hype like in Smite 1, and Kilgoon said with the way development is going right now, they don't feel like saving saving things for a big update is the best way, as they want to release stuff as it's ready to improve the game as quickly as they can. However, he did say they do want to have a few more big hype generating kind of patches that are bigger moments to bring back players. Because as it is at the moment, there's just, you know, a new update every 2 weeks that has like a certain amount of content, and it's like kind of hard to follow a lot of the time for the community. That's basically what they said. And so having a few moments that is like, this is when you should come back and try the game if you didn't like it last time, that will probably be useful, I think. Someone mentioned that the god role identifiers are a bit out of date or just inaccurate in general, with some of them including gods that really aren't viable in that role anymore and not including some aspect gods that are pretty viable in that role. And Kilgun said they did do an update to this somewhat recently, but they also want to be careful with adding aspect gods to those recommendations, as it can lead to a lot of newer or inexperienced players throwing games because they picked, for example, Cupid support but didn't go the aspect. Cupid was listed under the support tab, but new players don't know that it's only the aspect version that's viable there. They need some kind of way of communicating to players if they want to add a lot of the aspect gods to their respective roles. There was a question of if they would go back and add prisms to existing skins that came before prisms were added, and Kilgun said they're definitely open to the idea and are discussing some skins they want to go back to internally, but they did also mention that it's better to add prisms as the skin releases. I imagine because that helps with prism sales as people check them out on patch day, whereas adding them after the fact, people might not even know to check the skin. Someone asked if they might have to slow down the pace of god releases as they get more and more harder gods to add and they run out of easy ports, and Kilgun said never say never, but they probably wouldn't have to slow down, because as they get more and more of the baseline tech built out from easier gods, they can use that baseline to build upon in terms of adding harder abilities or models in the future. Someone also mentioned that Aladdin has to be the hardest god ever added to Smite or Smite 2, and Kilgun said maybe, but he thinks King Arthur is probably harder actually, which explains why we don't have him in the game yet and why he's been delayed several times. He was originally planned to release alongside Mordred during closed alpha, which was a long time ago. Cucullin was also asked about, and Kilgun said he is generally quite a hard god to make, not the hardest ever or anything, but having 2 models and animation sets and some unique tech with his rage makes him harder than most. Kilgun also mentioned that Cucullin is not very popular, which surprised me. Someone mentioned Aspect Kali's auto attacks being very hard to see and not having good audio feedback, and Isaiah said he agrees and they're looking into making that better. Isaiah also mentioned that Scylla and Ganesha do have aspects in the works. Apparently this was mentioned before, but I didn't know about this, so I thought I would add it to the video. Someone mentioned that there are a lot of aspects that push gods into support, ADC, and solo, but not a whole lot for mid or jungle, and Kilgun said they'll definitely take that into account into the future, and maybe some more mid and jungle aspects. Someone asked if they still plan to release one god for every role in a cycle before going back for another role, and Kilgun said it's not a hard and fast rule or anything, but that is generally what they want to do. Aspects can also give potential to get a new god viable in your role sooner than usual, like for example Aspect Apollo in support with Ganesha releasing soon after. And finally, there was a question of if they could add lifesteal under the self-healing tab in the post-match lobby, and Kilgun said they're internally conflicted on this. Some people think it would be a really good idea, some people are against it. Personally, I think they should definitely either include lifesteal in self-healing or give it its own tab, both because it's cool to see how much lifesteal you did and because it's useful for inexperienced players. For example, if they see an Anubis with no self-healing, they won't buy anti-heal against him, but if they see an Anubis with 50,000 lifesteal healing, they will reconsider that choice. But that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Don't forget to drop a like before you leave and subscribe to the channel to catch my future recaps as they drop, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.